Alright, Shalom, Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Hebrews, I want y'all to think about this. You know, we know Israelite history now, but it's little bitty things that, we got to, get an understanding of so we can see a better picture and so forth, and that I want to try to explain this. And I pray everybody get understanding is that the strangers, man, we had a lot of folks in the promised land. A lot of folks, Canaanites, Hittites, peoples from all over, and I want to explain, as some of y'all know, that the strangers had to do our law and worship Almighty Yah. And, he accepted them as us. They had to be circumcised and they had to worship the Creator, and they had to do the laws that Almighty Yah gave us. All of them. They had to do the things that we had to do. Okay, what happened to them folks? Because they wouldn't be up under no curses if they not the children of Israel, and then they doing the law, and then the children of Israel break the covenant and then get expelled from the promised land, the inheritance that the Creator gave us. Then what would happen to the strangers? Would they keep our heritage and keep it intact? And yes, that's what happened to us. That's what happened to us Israelites. And then that's why you got all these folks all around, saying that they Israelites, and some of them can trace they Israelite customs back hundreds and thousands of years, especially these groups right here. Oh man, they got a long history of being, in the Israelite heritage. I got a lot of videos explaining this, but it's something that the Israelite community need to understand, that a lot of people got our heritage when we abandoned it for Egyptian religion. It was peoples already in place, and they didn't get the punishment that we Israelites had coming, because they wasn't real Israelites, but they was doing the customs that we had, and that's can be seen 2 Kings 17:24, when the Sepharvims, who are Amorites, were placed in our land during our Assyrian troubles. These peoples right here are Amorites, and they come from Babylon. They come from Babylon, and they was Amorites. They was the same as the Gabonites. The Gabonites were Amorites during Joshua time, when the Gabonites tricked us and told us that they was coming from a far distance and so forth, when they really lived close, and we made a promise not to destroy them using Almighty Yah name. But man, they were strangers, and ain't no telling how many of them it was. But this is the thing about them. Those are Sephardi, is that the root word, the term that they use, Semitic, comes from the word semi. And I've shown in a few videos that the Amorites mix with all the ancient Canaanite tribes. Mix with all the ancient Canaanite tribes, or all the tribes we were to destroy. They mix with them, and then they become like one under the Amorite culture, and then that would translate into these folks, the Sepharvims, the Sephardi's, who come from mixed Babylon. The Amorites would mix with all the ancient tribes in Tanakh history. and they would, the Sebhardis is they, parent name, and that covers the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Amorites, and so forth, and they would all be mixture with Amorite, and the chief of the Amorites were the Sebharavims. These are mixed tribes and so forth. That they mix with all the ancient tribes, and that's where the word Semitic come from, and this semi Indian, that how all those people would be in our land under the ancient Amorite title and so forth. You can see in the Tanakh how the Amorites would mix with the Anakims, the Hittites, and all kind of folks. And that they would all come up under this title, Seb Hardy, when it came to looking at them as Israelites. They would have our heritage from ancient times, and then they narrowed it down to these few little names because the people's the main ones that would put our history together and keep it, and who been using the Babylonian god history and so forth that they kept, and that they would take control of our heritage, and then that's where you get a lot of the spook history from and so forth attached to the Israelite heritage, and that'll be the New Testament. They're gonna create something off the original, and then run with that. But those folks will be strangers in our land, and they were subjected to the same laws we Israelites were subjected to. All strangers. It was strangers that left with us during Exodus. Now, remember, all these folks would be doing the Israelite heritage and custom, but they wouldn't get the same punishment we got, because we were supposed to lead the way. Everybody supposed to worship Almighty Yah and fall up under the law that we was given in the past. It's gonna be a new law, a new covenant now, and it's not gonna be like the one in Egypt. And then that's also how you can distinguish the peoples that are not Israelites, is that they doing the old covenant, and that they didn't go through the punishment that the Israelites went through for breaking the covenant, and then would need a new covenant, and that they the strangers doing the old covenant that we had when we come out of Egypt. But let's look at some of these verses and so forth. I want to establish that that a mixed multitude left with us, and then I'm gonna start showing some verses of how the strangers were subjected to the same laws the Israelite community was subjected to. So then if they doing the same laws, and then they living amongst us, and then we get driven out, but they didn't, then those people would have our heritage today. And being that it was so long ago, they can not recognize us as being the true Israelites, as been happening and so forth. But they know the deal. The day of reckoning is here and so forth. All right, man. If you go to Exodus, man, it'll be Exodus 12. Exodus 12, and then you get down to 38, and it says, moreover, a mixed multitude went up with them, and very much livestock, and both flocks and herds, and they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had taken out of Egypt, for it was not leavened. Man, I believe this will go on to show that it's one law for everybody. So I'm going to keep reading it. Alright. For it was not leavened, since they had been driven out of Egypt, and could not delay, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The length of time that the Israelites lived in Egypt were 430 years, and at the end of their 430th year, to the very day, all the ranks of the Elohim departed from the land of Egypt. That was for the Elohim a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is the Elohim's one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout all ages. The Elohim said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the law of the Passover offering. No foreigner shall eat of it, but any slave a man has brought may eat it once he has been circumcised. No bound or hired laborer shall eat of it. It shall be eaten in one house. Ye shall not take of the flesh outside of the house, nor shall you break a bone of it. The whole community of Israel shall offer it. If a stranger who dwells with you would offer the Passover to the Elohim, all his males must be circumcised. Then he shall be admitted to offer it. He shall then be as a citizen of the country, but no uncircumcised person may eat of it." You see, and there shall be one law for the citizen and for the stranger who dwells among you. See, the strangers got the same law we got, and the same rituals that we had to do. They were subjected to it. You see, they were subjected to it. So then that means that after we Israelites were driven out the land, me and them folks were still, the strangers would still have our heritage. They would still have our heritage. And then that's the folks that claim Israelite heritage but didn't go through the transatlantic slave trade and was punished severely as the real Israelites had to do for breaking covenant, Alright, we're going to look at, some more of this, but it was one law. It is one law for everybody. One law for everybody, And then, I want to see, let's go to Exodus 20:10, and let's see what it say. Exodus 20:10. Let's see what it say. Alright, we got 20, and let's get to verse 10. And it says, "But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Elohim, y'all, and ye shall do no work, any work, you, your sons, your daughters, your male or your female slaves, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements." So we know that the stranger had to do the Passover, and that he did the Passover, and that he did the Sabbath. You see, if you go to Exodus 20:10, you will see that it says, alright, "But the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Elohim, your Yah. You shall not do any work. You or your daughters, your sons or your daughters, your male or female slaves, or your cattle, or the strangers who is within your settlements. For in 6 days the Elohim made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Elohim blessed the seventh day and hallowed it." So everybody had to do the Passover, because you see, or the stranger who is within your settlements. Now, I can go show that we had a whole lot of strangers within our settlements from the start, because we never drove out the tribes. We never drove out the tribes, and how some of them was left there. They leaders was took out, but the peoples was left there to test us, to see if we was gonna break bad and how long it was gonna take. And I got it down as around about 820 years that it took us, to break covenant from Exodus with Prophet Moses, that would be 1446 or something like that, all the way to 588 BCE, man. It's gonna be about 800 something years, and we was out of there. We was out of there, driven off the land, all of us. But the strangers were still intact with our heritage. So we see that the strangers did the Passover, and that the strangers did the the Sabbath, and to reaffirm that the strangers did the Passover, man, go to and these are the folks that was placed in 722 BC. So it would have been some more Amorites doing the Passover, man, before the Sebhardists got placed in our land. Man, it's a lot of stuff dealing with this. Man, I want to show. All right, let me show some of that. Now I might jump around just a little bit, but if you go to second, man, that'll be Second Chronicles. That'll be Second Chronicles 30, and then that's dealing with King Hezekiah. Second Chronicles 30, and this is 7 years after the Assyrians placed the Sephardims, the Sephardists in our land, who would do a version of the customs that was in the land, and then they was Amorites. These are scribes that's Amorites that's been keeping Babylon's God's history. The ones from Sephardim. Let me show them real quick. Let me show them real quick, and then we'll understand that they was in our heritage, and that they gonna be doing the our customs. They gonna be doing our customs. All right, Second Kings 17. Let's get that out the way. 17, Second Kings. I'm in First Kings. All right, now we're in Second Kings 17. All right, Second Kings 17. All right. See, look, 24. Look. Let's get where we can see this. The kings of Assyria brought people from Babylon, from Cuddar, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim. See Sepharvaim? And he settled them in the towns of Samaria in the place of the Israelites. And they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in the towns. When they first settled there, they did not worship the Elohim, so the Elohim sent lions against them, which killed some of them, and they brought somebody back. And then, as you read, it'll tell you they worshiped the Elohim while serving their own gods. They worshiped the Elohim while serving their own gods, according to the practice of the nations from which they would come from. So they would mix our heritage with some of their customs and so forth, and they eating traditions and so forth. And that would happen when we Israelites got chased out the land during the Babylonian wars, and our heritage fell completely in the hands of the strangers. And then that they would, write books and create history, go around the world converting folks to this religion that they called Judaism, that was created off the Israelite heritage. I'm going to do a video about the converts one day, who all they were and where all they come from, and and so forth. But we see that the Sephardists would be in our land in 722 BC. Now let's go to Second Chronicles 30, and this will be 7 years after their place, and they will be considered strangers. But if you followed the Israelites' custom and tried to worship Almighty Yah, that's what he wanted in the end, and from the beginning all the way to the end, because you see in the beginning that the stranger was allowed to do the Passover. the stranger was instructed to do the Sabbaths. The strangers were instructed to do everything we Israelites were supposed to do. It was one law for everybody. Now, when we Israelites get chased out the land, that the strangers gonna have our heritage, and those are the folks today that didn't go through the transatlantic slave trade uh, uh, punishment for breaking covenant during the Babylonian Wars. When we said we wanted to go into Africa by way of Egypt to do the Egyptian religion. All right, so when we go to Second Chronicles, and then you get to reading Second Chronicles, Second Chronicles, it is 715 BC, and this also show you that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes. Now, the strangers created a lot of false history off the Israelite history, and they used that false history to justify the converts in the distant lands and so forth. You see, when those Sephardims was placed in our land, and they wasn't us, but yet they was allowed to do our customs, then they started converting folks in other lands and allowed them to do our customs the same as we did, and then that's how our heritage got spread everywhere and so forth. You know, so man, let's see if we can find some of this here. But I wanted to show how the strangers come to the Passover dinner, but this will also show that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes during Assyrian times. Remember, King Hezekiah was around, and that the Assyrians didn't get destroyed till 612 BC by Ashkenazi when they came on in and ran us Israelites out of our heritage for saying that we was going to do Egyptian religion. But this is Second Chronicles. Let me see if I can shorten it and get exactly what it verse said. If I can get exactly what it verse said, that it might help some. But the strangers. Alright, the strange, that's going to be verse 25. 25. So I got a little reading to do. But I'm going to get to it. Let's do it. Alright, Hezekiah. Let's see this here. Let's put this right here. Alright. This Second Chronicles 30. This is in 715 BCE. This is 7 years after the so-called 10 lost tribe myth was created falsely, and that this showed that the Israelites were still in the land, and that how the strangers come to the Passover dinner to eat with us, and them gonna be the people that was placed in Assyria in 722 BC by the king of Assyria, and that how that they will start doing our heritage, and they even came to Passover dinner. So this showed that if all these folks doing our heritage and been doing our heritage since Exodus, the strangers, that when the real Israelites get chased out the land, then the strangers still gonna have the heritage, because the strangers didn't get the punishment that the Israelites had coming to them. That's why that our heritage is still going on today, and different peoples in different lands have it, is because that they are descended from the strangers, the folks that didn't get their heritage blotted out for breaking covenant, as we real Israelites did. All right, Hezekiah sent, this is Second Chronicles 30, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah. He also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of the Elohim in Jerusalem to keep the Passover for the Elohim Yah of Israel. The king and his officers and the congregation in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the second month, for at the time they were unable to keep it, for not enough priests had sanctified themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The king, the whole congregation, thought it proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan that they come and keep the Passover for the Elohim of Israel in Jerusalem. Not often did they act in accordance. Let me show this real quick. That from Beersheba to Dan, that King Hezekiah wrote letters, and it wouldn't make no sense for him to write letters throughout the whole land if everybody took him away in 722 BC. All right. So we see this Beersheba, and he sent the letter all the way to Dan, telling them to come to the Jerusalem, man, to eat some of this Passover dinner. Is what King Hezekiah did. So this is in 715 BC. So all the people still at home. All right. To Beersheba, to Dan, did they come and keep the Passover for the Elohim of Israel in Jerusalem. Not often did they act in accordance with what was written. The courier went out with letters from the king and his officers throughout all Israel and Judah by order of the king, proclaiming, O you Israelites, return to the Elohim Yah of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remain of you who escaped from the hands of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your fathers. See, look, who escaped from the hands of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your fathers and brothers who trespass against the Elohim Yah of their fathers and return them into horrors as you see. Do not be stiff-necked like your fathers. Submit yourselves to the Elohim and come to his sanctuary, which he consecrated forever, and serve the Elohim your Yah, so that his anger may turn back from you. If you return to the Elohim, your brothers and children will be regarded with compassion by their captors and will return to their land. For the Elohim your Yah is gracious and merciful. He will not turn his face from you if you return to him. As the carriers passed from town to town in the land of Zebulun. So it wouldn't make no sense for him to write letters there and nobody there and so forth if they was all taken away. The Assyrians kidnapped the fighters. I got that in plenty of videos. Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, who was protecting the Egyptian religion in the northern kingdom. All right. As the carriers passed from town to town in the land of Ephraim, Manasseh, till they reached Zebulun, they were laughed at and mocked. Some of the people of Asher and Manasseh and Zebulun, however, were contrite and came to Jerusalem. The hand of the Elohim was on Judah to make them of a single mind to carry out the command of the king and officers concerning the ordinance of the Elohim. A great crowd assembled at Jerusalem to keep the feast of unleavened bread in the second month. A very great congregation. They set to and remove the altar that were in Jerusalem. They removed all the incense stands, threw them into the wooded Kidron. They slaughtered the Paschal sacrifice on the 14th of the second month. The priests and the Levites were ashamed, and they sanctified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the house of the Elohim. They took their station and was their rule according to the teachings of Moses, the man of Yah. The priests dashed the blood which they received from the Levites, since many in the congregation had not sanctified themselves. The Levites were in charge of slaughtering the paschal sacrifice for everyone who was not clean, so as to consecrate them to the Elohim. For most of the people, many from Ephraim and Manasseh, Ishkar, and Zebulun, had not purified themselves, yet they ate the Paschal sacrifice in violation of what was written. Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, the good Elohim will provide an atonement for everyone. And that's because the northern kingdom was messed up with Egyptian religion since 931 BC, when Jeroboam come out of Egypt with it and so forth. So they gonna be a little messed up in the northern kingdom, but King Hezekiah was getting them together to come to the Passover to do Almighty Yah wills. All right, and this man of worshiping the Elohim of his father, even if he is not purified for the sanctuary. Elohim heard Hezekiah and healed the people. The Israelites were in Jerusalem, kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with great rejoicing. The Levites, the priests, praising the Elohim daily with powerful instruments for the Elohim. Hezekiah pursued all the Levites who performed skillfully for the Elohim to spend the 7 days of the festival, making offerings of well-being and confessing to the Elohim of their fathers. All the congregation resolved to keep 7 more days. So they kept 7 more days of rejoicing. King Hezekiah of Judah contributed to the congregation 1,000 bulls, 7,000 sheep, and the officers contribute to the congregation 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep, and the priests sanctified themselves in large numbers. All right, now watch this. Listen to this. All the congregation of Judah and the priests and the Levites and all the congregation that come out of Israel and the resident aliens who come from the land of Israel who lived in Judah rejoice. So it was folks in our land during the Passover, during Hezekiah time. Man, we had one law for everybody. It was one law for everybody. So, we gonna have the folks that we didn't drive out the land gonna still be there, and they gonna come to the Passover dinners and do our rituals and laws that Prophet Moses gave us to when we was driven out. They gonna still be there doing the law. Man, if you go to Exodus 22:1, and then let's see what it say. Exodus 22:1. Because we had a law for the stranger. It was a law for the stranger, and it was a law for us, and it was the same. They had to be the same as us. All right, 22. All right, 22:21. And let's see what it say. 22. All right. This is Exodus 22:21. Ye shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Ye shall not treat any widow or orphan. You know what I'm saying? So, that's Almighty y'all telling us that we got to treat everybody the same. So while we was doing the law in the promised land, them folks was doing the law too. All right? When you get to Exodus 23, 9, 12, let's see what it say. You will not oppress a stranger. So them folks can live in our land and do our land, but they wouldn't get the same punishment we got. It's why our heritage is everywhere. All right. This is Exodus 23:9. Ye shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. So we couldn't oppress the stranger, and the stranger was allowed to do our covenant in detail as Tanakh show, to whereas when we real Israelites ran out the land, that the strangers still had our heritage intact. Easy to see. All right, so then, man, if we go to man, it'll be, let me find another good one. All right. Man, if we go to Leviticus 16, Leviticus 16:29. Let's see what it say. Leviticus 16. I almost turned right to it. And then we get to verse 29. And let's see. Look. That's Leviticus. Alright. And this shall be to you a law for all times. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall practice after now. You shall do no manner of work, neither the citizen nor the alien who reside among you. For this day of atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you of all your sins. Ye shall be clean before the Elohim. So, man, they had to do the Day of Atonement. The strangers had to do the Day of Atonement. The strangers had to do the Passover. The stranger had to do the Sabbath. The strangers had to do the Day of Atonement. So we see all this right here. You know what I'm saying? We see all this right here. Now watch this. Go to 17:8. 17:8. Let's see what 17:8 and 9 say. So them folks doing our customs. So already from way back then. So they ain't never was told not to do it. And they didn't go into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, which would translate into slavery for them, for breaking a covenant that they didn't originally receive, and that they just hung around us and did our law. And then when we get run off for breaking the law, that they still there doing the law. Now that's how our heritage has been rolling from back then. All right, this is 17. All right. Say to them, Father, if anyone of the house of Israel or of the strangers who reside among them offer a burnt offerings or a sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it to the Elohim, that person shall be cut off from his people. So they could bring sacrifices. The strangers can bring sacrifices. They could do the Passover. They could do the Sabbath. They could do atonement. I mean, they doing everything right there. They doing everything. And then I showed that it was some strangers that wasn't of the children of Israel in Yah's army and so forth. Let me show how many strangers was in the land. This is just from the beginning. Now look, let's go to Solomon. Man, I think it's Second Chronicles 2:17. Let's see what that say. Second Chronicles 2:17. Let's see what was happening during King Solomon time. I know King David was dealing with some strangers after he did the count, and he put them to work. But let's see how many was here during Solomon time. Now, ain't no telling how many was there during Exodus and so forth. But let's see during Solomon time. We're going to go to 2:17. All right, 2:17. All right. All right, now check this out. This is awful right here. Look. This 2 Chronicles 2:16. Solomon took a census of all the aliens who were in the land of Israel, besides the census given by his father David, and they were found to be 153,600. You know what I'm saying? That's how many strangers that was in the land during Solomon time. 153,600. That's a lot of folks. That's a lot of folks. Not counting this. This is before. This is 941 BC or something like that. When Solomon on, man, about 200 years later, man, whole nations of peoples was placed in our land. Not counting during the Persian times too, that nations of peoples was be put in our land. Now just imagine all these nations of peoples are doing the customs that we had, but they are not Israelites. They gonna still be around doing them same customs and not be up under the curses and so forth. Man, let's look at this here, man. I want to show this real quick. So the strangers, man, he had to do everything we did, but that didn't make him no Israelites, man. If you go to man, I think that's, yes, Ezra 4. And then you'll see that all these nations of peoples was put in our land. This is Ezra 4. Look. the Danites, the Archiphishites, the Tarpelites, the Arshiphites, the Archivites, the Babylonians, the Shushanites, the Devites, and the Elamites. Not counting, not counting the ones that was there from 722 BC that the king of Assyria placed. Now these nations of folks, they ain't, you know what I'm saying, no telling how many of them it was. Look, 2 Kings 24, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cuddle, and Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, that's them Amorites, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. So all them will start doing our customs. All them will start doing our customs and so forth. And they will be doing our heritage for a couple of thousand years, you know. And when the Israelites, the real ones, got cut off and washed out of history, and didn't nobody talk about us but the Tanakh, that we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. This only wrote in the Tanakh because all the Western lands and so forth were those converts being. Man, matter of fact, it's a good thing, man, is that I got this map. Man, I didn't believe that I had this map here. And those are the Semites, meaning the peoples, they got pigmentation too. But how that they would be in all those lands and so forth. And they would be converting folks in all those lands, making them into Israelites and giving them an Israelite heritage and stuff over the years. And they would get ran out. The people practicing the Israelite heritage would get ran out and chased from east to west and from west to east. And then they would go settle men in the promised land. And then they got some fighting going on there because it's two ethnic groups claiming our heritage. The Semites gonna be the ones that got pigmentation that's looking like Arabs, and they might be Chinese, they might be Africans and so forth. And then you got Ashkenazi, you know, the pure Caucasians claiming the Israelite heritage. And then they came in during the Babylonian wars and chased us out for doing Egyptian religion. And then they settled in our land in what's called Scythopolis, Beth Shane, ancient Beth Shane. And then they would be doing Israelite heritage too. You know, they will be doing the Israelite heritage up to this day. And then that's why, you know, they there. Let's see if I see. Look, you see Scythopolis. Scythopolis, that's where the Scythians settled. And that would be Ashkenazi name, code name in ancient history. And then he settled there during the Babylonian wars. And after the Babylonian wars, after we got chased out the promised land, so he will be doing what all the other peoples, the foreigners in the land that we didn't chase out, would be doing our heritage. And he would start doing it too. And then them would be the dominant groups doing our heritage and claiming the Israelite heritage and so forth. Is these folks right here. Both groups, you know, one got pigmentation and one don't. And one is the ones that don't got pigmentation claiming the Israelite heritage. Man, it's them. It's them. And then these, the ones that's claiming the Israelite heritage that's mixed with all the ancient peoples that we didn't drive out, that was claiming our heritage and that submitted to our culture. And then when we, the real Israelites, get chased out, and then they will fall up under these names right here. They will fall up under those names, and those the peoples that we left in our land when we got chased out. Almighty Yah only wanted us chased out, and that the people coming from Babylon that chased us out were kin to them, so they didn't bother them. And then that's why come they was left around with our heritage all the way to the day. You know, so a lot of people got our Israelite heritage. A lot of people got our Israelite heritage. Is that we had one law for everybody. But let me show us going into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, which would allow them to get our heritage. And it took place in the book of Jeremiah. The book of Ezekiel is supposed to be before the book of Jeremiah, because it's when they attacked us the first time, and then that how we didn't stop doing the evil wickedness that we was doing, and then how we was eventually driven out the land. All right, if you go to Jeremiah 44, and then you get down to verse 15, and it says, Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. So when we said that, going into the Egypt to live meant to do their customs, that the strangers was left with our heritage. And that when we got enslaved and was taken to the Americas, and that them folks still had our heritage, and we had abandoned our heritage. The only reason why we waking up to our heritage now, because we had to understand why these folks dogging us out so bad in captivity and continuously dogging us out, is because the peoples that been having the Israelite heritage that were strangers long time ago is in control of the system, and they don't really want us to come back. Meaning to our Israelite heritage has been the whole battle. It's been the whole battle. Alright, so everybody had to keep the law. The strangers had to keep the law, which would allow them to have our law after we got chased off. Man, if we go to Leviticus 18:26, let's see what it say. And it say, But you must keep my laws and my rules, and you must not do any of the abhorrent things, neither the citizen nor the stranger who reside among you. Alright. But ye must keep my laws. This Leviticus 18:26. But ye must keep my laws and my rules, and ye must not do any of the abhorrent things, neither the citizen nor the stranger who reside among you. For all of those abhorrent things were done by the people who were in the land before you, and that the land became defiled. So, that's what happened. Look, and it says, So let not the land spew you out for defiling it, as it spewed out the nations that come before you. They would come back, and we would let them in to do the law that we was given, and we end up getting kicked out, and they end up staying in our land. That's some cold mess. It's how we get kicked out, and the strangers stayed doing our heritage and got it right now today. Alright, Israelites, I hope that this was informative till y'all can go keep on reading a whole lot of verses. A whole lot of verses showing that the strangers had the same rights that we had. But let me show this, because this is what's going to make a difference. This is what's going to make a difference. And it's going to make a difference soon, is that they going to be doing the old covenant, that we going to get a new covenant, some new laws, and then that's going to separate us from the folks that got our heritage from the strangers that got our heritage and so forth. Is that when we get a new law, all right? This is Jeremiah, I believe 31:31. See, a time is coming, declared the Elohim, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, and it will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant which they break, though I espouse them, declaring the Elohim. But such is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after these days, declared the Elohim. I will put my teachings into their innermost being and subscribe it upon their hearts. Then I will be their Yah, and they shall be my people. No longer will they need to teach one another and to say to one another, heed the Elohim, for all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall heed me, declares the Elohim. So all the strangers that's doing our laws that we got from Egypt is not going to be up under this new covenant until we bring them in, and after we get situated. And it'll be kind of like in the past where we'll let them do what we do, but this time we won't get tricked out of our heritage to worship false gods and so forth. I believe it was a trick just to let the strangers get a hold to our land. And if you read the book of Judges, we did not drive the strangers out in the peoples of the land out, them Canaanites out. But like I said, all those Canaanites will get mixed with the Amorites, and those Amorites from Babylon that was placed in our land in 722 BC would attack our heritage and start doing it. They would absorb our heritage, is what I meant to say, and start doing it and put their spin on it. And then they would go to different lands and so forth, and then they would convert folks and then make them into Israelites by conversions and so forth. All right, Israelites, the strangers got our heritage, and those are the folks that's doing our heritage today that didn't go through the transatlantic slave trade. All right, this is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.